Hi, it's Matty from Matty's Custom Scale, and I thought I'd give you a little bit of a tour of these little miniature skateboards I've 3D designed and printed, show you some of the components and how they assemble, and show you some of the different styles I've come up with. Some of them I might use for dioramas, others I might actually match with a build, just something to sit in the cars. So it's a multi-piece. They're not printed as one piece. So I'll print the board, the trucks, and the wheels independently. And I thought what I'll do is I'll just give you a quick look at what they all look like. So this is obviously the finished one, and this is done in more of a street sort of a style, a bit more urban, and I'll talk about how I get that look. This is essentially what the board will look like on its own once it's printed, and I'll print them standing up like that, and then I just clean up one of the edges. That seems to get the best result, because what you can see is I've got a little bit of a profile on them. They'll curve in the middle a little bit and out towards the edges, and I've done that to be similar to the real ones. And what you'll see very faintly just above that word hard is a little square area that's coming up. There's one there, and there's one about there as well, a bit hard to see on this board. But that's actually, those are locators for the trucks to sit. That way you get them positioned about right. And even when you're decorating or weathering them, whatever you want to do, you at least have you know where the trucks are going to go, so you'll build your patterns or you'll line things up around that. The truck, or let me go with the wheels. So the wheels are quite small, obviously, yeah. But this is what they'll look like printed, and I'll stand them up with, so print beds there, I'll stand them upright. If I do it side on, they'll be upright so that they actually print as a donut that's standing on its side, yeah. So the hole is what you would see front on. Does require a little bit of sanding to just get that round shape, but it will come up with the the hole in the middle. And the reason I've got that hole in the middle is obviously you want to paint your wheels to be white or whatever color you want to do, but once you attach them to the trucks, so these are the trucks here, I'll try and get that focus. It's actually a pretty detailed truck, so I've painted them silver, and then I've gone over it with a panel line wash, and that starts to bring out some of the extra details. Otherwise it just looks like a blob. Yeah, and I can show you some of the 3D artwork as well, so that you get a sense of what it would look like. This is a 1/24 scale, which is what I modeled them at. There's 4 bolts. There's the area of the area that turns the skate. Yeah, it's all in there. And then as you glue the wheels onto these trucks, because you've got the hole in the middle, you'll actually have that contrasting color between the color of the truck, or sorry, color of the wheel, and whatever the color of the truck ends up being. So regardless of what color silver that you do, they're all going to come up slightly grayish with there's that shadow as well, so it'll come up sort of grayish or darkish when the wheel sits on it. So if I go back to the skateboard itself, you see the wheels on the truck. See it from a distance, you can see that dot in the middle. Yeah. Okay, so now what I think I'll show you is a few different ways that I've gone and decorated them. So obviously this has got a few layers of detailing done to it, and I'll explain how I get that look. So obviously step 1 is paint it white. Then what I've done is I've gone into my decal boxes, And I've actually pulled out all the decals from NASCARs, and I've specifically cut out the NASCAR details that have nothing to do with cars, right? So other brands, they often have some words on there, and I've tried to take things, or advertisements there, I try to take things that picked out something that was maybe had a little bit more street cred, something a bit fun, or some specific words. So if I take an example of this one, I've got the word pro that was part of something. Keep the dream alive, I think there was a section underneath which had like a charity, Domino's Pizza. This A with a circle on it is actually not part of the decal for the car, but it was on the decal sheet, it was just off to the side, so it's like a little bit of a branding. I think that's Universal Pictures or Universal Studios circle there. If I take this one, High Life sounds pretty street, but actually it was at the bottom of a Miller light beer advertisement from a NASCAR, if I recall. Prisoner of War, MIA charity that was on the cars, that kind of looks like it's got some street cred on it. Budweiser, and then this happy little fella is actually, I cut it away from a Kellogg's cornflakes advertisement from a NASCAR, so it's just something that sticks out there. Now you can see on them as well that I've got blue, purple, black sort of writing, and all I've done is taken a Posca pen, I'll show you on some of the others, and just done a little bit of, I'll call it light graffiti work, something small, just to break it up a bit, yeah? Then, typically when a skateboard's used, and I mean, I can't call myself a skateboarder, I did it a little bit when I was young, but you know, if you watch the videos, they'll slide along the middle, they'll do some tricks that causes the bottom side to scrape along the floor. And so I've just added some darker areas across the middle, some scrapes. Because I've got layers of decal, if I started to sand, which would have been ideal, it was probably going to pull the decals, they're quite old, pull the decals in different ways. So I just relied on Posca to get that done. Yeah. Now, let's call these more traditional streetish. One item actually I'll also show is to get the grip on the top. That's actually 600 grit sandpaper that I just traced, cut down, and used some the same glue that I use for gluing in windows. I've used that on there as well, clamped it down for about 10 minutes to make sure I can get it into all the seams or into all the corners, and that's the look you get. So for a street version of a miniature skateboard, not too bad. And if you have them sitting up against a railing or next to a car or a building, a diorama, looks pretty good. It bends a little bit, but I mean, you wouldn't want to bend these 3D printed resin as a standard is usually quite brittle, so really it's for static, it's not for fingerboarding. Yeah. Now, I thought the next thing that I'll do is I'll look at what could I do as far as custom paint. You can call it a lowrider style or whichever. So I'll show you a few that I came up with. So all the ones I'm going to show you now start with a metallic, heavily metallic silver base. So black base, silver metallic base, and then add some tape work, and then add some candies. And you'll see from some of my other videos, the candies are the transparent colored paints, right? So this is almost like a racing stripe, one thick stripe, one thin stripe. And you can see that the consistency of the size of the stripe is actually pretty good. And so for all of the ones I'm going to show you, what I use is one of these cutting boards. I got them from Lowriders, and you'll put the tape along, and it has these little grooves, they're tiny grooves, from 0.4 mil up to 1 mil, and you just score your knife down them over the tape and cut your slice. So that makes it a little bit easier to get the scale that you want, the consistency you want. And then after I've put that tape on, I've gotten a blue candy and I've faded it into the middle, and then a green candy and faded that into the middle. And that's how I've gotten that look. The next one is also pretty basic, very simple pattern, where I've got a teal candy in the middle. They fade out at the end, but then after I get those done, I cover them and then use that same blue candy for the rest of it. Yeah, and then these will get a clear coat, by the way. The next one, slightly more impactful, and this looks pretty good actually, especially when you display it next to a car. So you take a long string of tape, make your curved path. I've taken a dark, they call it a burnt amber candy, and then I'll spray over that tape line, but just enough that it oversprays over the tape line so you get that dark amber on the edges. And then once that's done, I don't take any tape off. I then get a lighter yellow candy and spray it over the top. Yeah, and that gets me this look. That way when I remove the tape, the silver base is exposed, and you end up with a pretty cool effect. Yeah. Next, I think, you know, this is, they call it a Mexican blanket. So it's blocks of the same color but with slightly different tones. And I think I've gone through on one of my other videos and explained what you do, but if we just take, let's say the orange for example, I would put lines of tape across it that are about the same width. I'd remove, let's say, one or two of the lines spaced apart, spray the candy, take another line of tape away, spray it all again, another line of tape, spray it again, and so you end up with these different levels of contrast in color. Yeah, or different contrasts of the same color. You'd block off obviously the areas that you're, so if I'm doing the orange, I'd block off the teal area and the red upwards area, but that's what you end up getting. Yeah, and they call that a Mexican blanket. The next one I'll show is, these are called, I think, this is like a more of an old school sort of a look, and these were, I think, speed dots or freak dots, something like that. So I've taken the straight pieces of tape, taped two rings around the edges, but then when I'm painting, let's say this one, I'd finished the blue on this board. I'd have a little bit more blue left in the airbrush. I'd add a little bit more thinner to thin it down, get up real close with the airbrush, spray a little dot, and then keep spraying but pull the airbrush away, and that gives this little colored dot. And I do that in multiple little areas, and you can imagine as I go through all of these colors and putting dots in different places, by the end of it you actually get a multicolored effect. And then when you take the tape off again, it leaves the base color of the silver, and that's what you end up having. Yeah. This pink one is called fingerprint style, and it's basically thin strips of tape. If you can see that lighter color, the lighter shade of pink, that's where the tape was. So that's the pattern, and it's almost like a fingerprint where you've got one shape that just keeps extending off the other. Try and leave a little bit of a consistent gap between them. And then I spray layers of the pink, and then on the outer edges a darker purple. I've used that darker purple as a candy, and it just creates a little bit of contrast and depth. Remove all of the tape off, and then a few light coats of the pink candy, and that's what you'll end up getting. Yeah. Last one, a little bit different. So this is called like a dragon scale sort of effect. So if you take a look fairly closely at the red in the middle, you'll see, especially up around this top area, there's like some pointy, stronger red or darker areas, yeah? And in the right light, you'll pick it up across the length of the board. So, similar sort of board to what I showed you that I got from Skateboards, except it's got a few different patterns and templates on it. And I used this one here. And what I did is this is the actual template that I used. So I put a piece of tape on here and used the black lines, which are channels, thin channels, to cut out a zigzag effect. That got me this template. But to actually get the paint done, I'd put the tape on it in a line, and then I'd spray with the airbrush a bit of candy, take it off, and then I would match an upwards spike with a downward spike from the previous layer, spray it again, offset a little bit, spray it again, and work my way down. Now, the pattern is cool, but what I will say is either the red I used or the amount of red I used, it didn't bring up as much of a contrast. So you really got to work hard to spot it and have a look at it, but it's there. I know it's there, yeah? But that's the other style. So these boards will be more of a display for a custom paint theme, and then these boards I'd use more for dioramas and streets. So there you go, a few ways to do it. Pretty cool. Give it a try, see what you enjoy, let me know how you go. Thanks.